Insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity? What's the difference? Let's talk about that. My name is Alan Warnitz. I'm a nutrition expert and I help people recover their health using nutrition. So insulin resistance basically at the end of the day it can actually end up with diabetes type 2. And the whole objective is with insulin is to try and get it to be back to its sensitivity, meaning it's sensitive, meaning it will be able to intake the glucose that comes through the blood cells, which at the end you have your constant levels of energy, mental sharpness is there as well, and you're not tired. So when there's insulin resistance, you'll be tired, you'll need power naps, and things don't go as good as you want. And you've got the onset of diabetes, and when it's sensitive, you get the opposite, which is when you were young. So how does that work now? How do we actually change it from resistance down to sensitivity? So when you were young, your insulin was sensitive, and what the insulin does, I've made a diagram here, these are your cells. So each cell has got inside there, call it energy factory, which is called a mitochondria. This produces energy. So to produce energy, so you have insulin in your blood cells going through, and it's got a glucose molecule here, sugar. So it arrives here, and at each cell there is what is called a docking site. It docks, so like a receptor site. It receives it. So now the insulin now has to arrive at the cell and dock there like a ship docking, and then it releases the glucose, and the glucose now goes into the energy factory. So when it goes to the energy factory, there's a process that happens, a chemical process that happens, and it turns into energy. There's a form of energy that the body uses, it's called ATP. That ATP turns into, there's what your brain cells need for mental alertness, it's what your muscle cells need for muscle movement, it's what your digestive system needs for digestion, and it's what your body's immune system needs. That's the form of energy that the body needs. So there's a conversion. So the glucose now has to arrive, dock at the cell, go inside the cell, travels to the mitochondria, the energy factory, and then converts to ATP, and the ATP becomes energy. When that process is happening constantly, you have a constant level of energy, you never get tired. Why do you get tired is because when the glucose arrives, it stops, it can't go into the thing. So that means there's no sensitivity. That's a resistance. It stops it. It resists, which means the glucose now stays in the blood and out it goes. And because you can't have glucose in the blood, the body now activates another process and turns the glucose, the sugar, into fat. So you start getting fat. So fat gets stored into your tummy, under your arms, and you get fatter and fatter because the glucose is not going in. And what tends to happen, you start to feel hungry again, you feel like you need to eat some more stuff that's got sugar, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So what can you do now to bring your cells back to sensitivity? So before we get to that, let's have a look at how does your body get a resistance? Why is it when you were 20 years old, you had so much energy, there was no resistance, and as you get older, the resistance builds up, fat builds up, and it just gets worse and worse. It actually can even happen at a younger age, depends on what you do, and I will explain how that happens. How does diabetes type 2 gets the onset, how it happens? Number one, you get junk foods. In the video, I'll give you a link as to what are junk foods. There's a lot of advertising on foods which you may believe that are good foods, actually are junk foods, so you need to learn that. An acid-alkaline diet, your acid diet, there's some foods that have got acid, which means when your food is digested, it turns into acid or it turns into alkaline. There's two things. So your diet should actually be 20% acid and 80% alkaline. What you tend to find is there's too high levels of acid foods and very little levels of alkaline foods. When that goes out of balance, that diet goes out of balance, it actually builds up resistance. So there's a link that I'll give you on the acid-alkaline diet, how to bring your diet up to 20% acid, 80% alkaline. This is the ideal, so that the sensitivity of your insulin goes up. Very important. So number one, get off junk foods. Number two, learn about the acid alkaline. You're not changing your diet, you just have to know which foods are acid foods, which foods are alkaline, and you just change the proportions of the foods. Another thing that actually increases resistance is toxins, drugs, medication. So if you've got lots of toxins, drugs and medication that you're taking, that also help affect affects the resistance. Fourth, excess carbs. A lot of carbs, bread, lots of roti, flour. Those are the culprits here, and sugar. Some people have tea or coffee and have 2 to 3 teaspoons of sugar per cup. That's very bad, which means it just increases the resistance, and your cells cannot receive it. It just stops it because there's too much. So that goes into fat storage. Number 5, part of the junk foods is refined oil and margarine. Refined oil and margarine is very toxic, and that blocks it. In other words, it just jams everything here. So most of the people that have got diabetes type 2, I'll notice that a lot of refined oils is in the foods, in the takeaways that you take, as foods are made of refined oil, and those are just blockers. They just block the receptor sites. There's no ways the sugar will just stay in the blood, and you're going to have more and more problem. And metabolic waste. Metabolic waste means when the energy is being produced, when all this process happen, they release waste. So there's waste that comes out and stays between the cells as well. That waste, if it doesn't get removed out and goes back, and that waste doesn't get removed and goes into the cell and gets eliminated through your kidneys and gets eliminated through the liver and excreted, that stays there, and actually that also blocks the movement of oxygen, movement of glucose into the cells. So you have to remove that metabolic waste. There's a way of removing that metabolic waste. You have basically, the liver is clogged. You just need to do a liver cleanse. You do a liver cleanse, and there's a substance called glutathione. Glutathione comes here, takes it out, and moves it into the blood, and out it goes to be eliminated. So when there's too much metabolic waste, which has built up over years and years and years, that just sits there, and that's why you start having insulin resistance, and there's no sensitivity. So when that happens, what is the danger that happens when you have resistance? You're going to start having heart problems, heart diseases, blockages. You might need triple bypasses. Often people with triple bypass, you find, has started with insulin resistance. You could have gangrene, which means your nerves have been damaged by the excess amount of sugar. The nerve endings are damaged, so there's no blood circulation, no feelings, and in the tips of your fingers or the tips of your legs, and then gangrene, and you have to amputate your legs. Blindness as well, because the nerves endings are damaged in the eyes, so so vision is actually affected. You get overweight, you start having joint pains, stroke I spoke about, and your immunity goes down, because immunity depends on vitamin D, and the more fat you have, the more fat storage you have, the more vitamin D is actually trapped in the fat. So as much vitamin D as you take, and if you've got too much fat, it actually gets trapped in this. So your vitamin D levels are low, so your immune system goes low, so you find yourself with flu, often, and colds, which come more often when you have this insulin resistance. So now, knowing that, what can you do there? So rest assured, something can be done about it. That's why the video, that's why I'm explaining it. So number 1, to increase your sensitivity, I spoke about it, 20% acid, 80% alkaline diet. I have a link which I'm going to give in the video, and you can actually click on the link and you get to know that what are the foods. So you just have to adjust this. A liver cleanse to increase the levels of glutathione. So the more glutathione you got, the more the waste can be removed. So liver cleanse, I've got a video on how to do liver cleansing so that detoxing can happen. Now, intermittent fasting is another recommendation I do, because intermittent fasting actually helps the body become less and less dependent on insulin. So that intermittent fasting actually gets the body to start using fat and turn fat into energy. So instead of glucose coming here, you're going to have fat coming here, and the fat going into the cells turns into energy. And that's a much better way of turning fat into energy. And the benefit of it is you're going to be losing weight as well, and your energy levels are going to be very high. So intermittent fasting, I've got a video on that as well, on how to do intermittent fasting. There's a certain way of doing it, so that you transition your body from using sugar as a form of energy and using fat as your form of energy, and that helps all of that. There's some herbs that can actually help with the sensitivity. You can take herbs. All these must be done together. You can't do one or the other. It has to be done together. So herbs, cinnamon. Cinnamon is normally put in food, or you can take cinnamon tablets. Ginger, berberine, which comes from a herb called golden seal. Turmeric, curcumin, fenugreek, and ginseng. Those are herbs that you can take, supplement, or you put in your foods, which will actually help with the sensitivity. So as you are removing the junk out of the area, you're clearing up the area is becoming back to clean, and it's easy. There's sensitivity, then the glucose and the fat is going in, then all this is starting to happen. So the cinnamon, the ginger, berberine, and all these will actually help with the sensitivity to allow the transportation of the glucose or the fat into the cells, so your energy levels go up. There's another supplement called alpha lipoic acid, which is at the same time an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory, and it also helps with becoming less dependent on insulin. It actually helps convert glucose into energy without the use of, with much less insulin. So your dependence on insulin can drop very, very low with alpha lipoic acid. I have a video which explains how to take alpha lipoic acid in 1 quantities, and that's all dependent, and you work with a health practitioner. And you have to have obviously electrolytes and hydration. Electrolytes would be calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. They're called electrolytes because it helps conduct electricity in between. So the whole process of movement of cells of sugar and fat and all that is dependent on electricity, dependent on how much is negative and positive. So these are electrolytes which allow that process to happen. So if your electrolytes are low, you've got low calcium, magnesium, potassium, or sodium, it actually impedes this, so that could actually even stop the movement of the glucose. So you need electrolytes and hydration. You need a lot of water with the hydration because water keeps the cells integrity and healthy. Another thing that actually improves sensitivity of glucose, it's medications called metformin or glucophage. That is, you can use this if need be. However, if you do all these things there, your need or dependence on medications will go lower and lower. So there you go. So there's your chance of increasing your energy production, improving your metabolism by doing this, removing the resistance and increasing the sensitivity. I offer a free health consultation, a 30-minute online health consultation. You can book that consultation. The link is provided in the video. So book your 30-minute online health consultation. It's free. And if you have this problem, I will go over this video and give you a personalized program like a map and direction to take you from this to that level. So if you're into living a longer life, having longevity, be pain-free, have energy, vitality, have endurance, have a better quality of life, and to have prevention rather than cure, here's your chance. Let's meet and let me take you on a journey to better health and bring you back to your healthy state that you had when you were younger. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you.